Welcome into a new episode of the Fight HQ podcast. Of course, I am Jason Floyd. I'll be joined here momentarily by the fighter Pete Rogers Jr. We're going to break down UFC 303, which goes down tomorrow there in Las Vegas. Of course, we've already had some news kind of come down on this one. Of course, we got a 13-fight card. We almost lost a fight, that being the co-main event. However, it is going to go forward as a lightweight matchup as Brian Ortega had been previously looking to go up to 155 pounds. Calls the Diego Lopes team last night, says, hey, we're not going to be able to make 145. How about we do this at 155? Diego Lopes team says, yep, let's go ahead and do it. So we're going to now have a lightweight co-main event. Of course, we got a rematch for the light heavyweight title in the main event as Alex Pereira looks to go to 2-0 against Jiri Prochazka. And, of course, I am joined by the fighter Pete Rogers Jr. Pete, I mentioned a stat yesterday on my show. You know the last time a UFC light heavyweight champion has made 2 successful title defenses in a row?
Damn, I really don't know. When? 2018,
Jon Jones.
I was going to say Jon Jones, too. I was really going to say Jon Jones. But, yeah, I mean, it's crazy to think that that's 6 years ago. That's insane. So, man, Jon Jones has been around for a long time, and that's exactly why he's, one of the best of all time, if not the best. But, yeah, I've always kind of felt like the upper divisions were kind of like a revolving door for most people outside of Jon Jones. You know what I mean? Like, you had these small title reigns for a little bit. You had GSP reigning forever at welterweight and below, you know what I mean? But, like, it always felt like there was just a changing of the guard consistently, from 185 and above.
Yeah, I mean, this light heavyweight title, how crazy it's been over the past couple of years of fighters getting injured and all various things happening here. And so it'll be interesting to kind of see how this one does go down here. So we do appreciate everyone that's tuning in for this episode of the Fight HQ podcast. Of course, if you got any questions, be sure to line those up in the chat. We'll get to those as we do go forward here. But by the way, I got to give a little congratulations to Pete the Heat here as he comes in second in last week's DK contest. Congratulations, Pete, for going down second in last week's contest, man.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I have to get super unique. And even if like the lineups that I create, I don't necessarily agree with the picks, I just try to get super unique in our contest as I would in a single entry contest, right? Like, it was a pretty good week last week. I was profitable in multiple ways from sports betting to DFS. I thought I had a really good lineup, and I did. It was a top X percent, but just didn't get over the hump. I was a little too light to the was it the main event? Who was the main event last week? I don't even remember.
Last week's main event was, where were we at? We were in Vegas last week.
See, when you guys get our age, you start forgetting stuff like this. I don't even remember. But anyways, I was really light to a fight. And because I was so light to a fight, the exposure levels and everything, it just didn't end up working out for my favor. But I still placed pretty decently, and the sports betting was great. I like prop hunting, finding good props. It was a fun week. Now this week's card is a very good card, but I'm having a hard time. I've been telling Jason, I've been having a really hard time. I've been knacking my brain trying to figure out which side I'm going to pick. I've been teeter-tottering on both sides in multiple fights. And then, like, tiebreakers coming down to, like, UFC experience, overall combat experience. And, I'm expecting it to be a volatile slate. Tons of live dogs. Who actually comes through, we shall see.
Yeah, we'll see how that is going forth there. Of course, we're going to break this one down for you. Of course, we have our DK contest that's already live. You can check that out in the show notes. Of course, congratulations to B-Rubby taking down the contest last week with 537 points. We had 3 fighters go out there and get 100-plus points. Robert Whitaker in the main event last week going out there in the first round, scoring 105 points. Volkan Ozdemir scoring 125 points and almost 125 points. And then Kelvin Gastelum getting 102 points. Definitely did not see that one coming. And we'll see. I don't know if you saw Santino DeFranco come out and label out his excuses of why we were not, why the weigh-in issues last week. The meal prep thing from the UFC was the one I was like, okay, I'll give you the staph infection. I'll give you the other things. Come on, man. Your guy literally has a YouTube series called Missed Weight.
Yeah, exactly. I don't understand. Like I said, like Kelvin Gastelum went out there and he's a good fighter. Yeah, and when he puts everything together, he's at that top tier of the division. It's just like he can't get out of his own way. Blending the striking and wrestling is something that separated him on The Ultimate Fighter. And early on in his UFC career, but he's a wrestler that started falling in love with his hands and started falling in love with missing weight as well. So if he can really, just put that weight missing aside, stick to 185, I think that he'll do fine. He's always going to be at a height and reach disadvantage because of his frame. But, yeah, I'm not here for the excuses, and I'm really honestly tired of these fighters missing weight constantly.
Yeah, we see it all the time there in terms of this one. But let's get right into game theory when we talk about UFC 303 here, Pete. Obviously, you look at pricing's pretty interesting this week because we have two fights that have 8,400 versus 7,800 over on DK. Different situation when we're talking about the FanDuel side of the equation. We have a misprice in a female matchup of Bueno Silva and Macy Chiasson, which is a straight up pick'em matchup where Macy Chiasson 7,400, Bueno Silva 8,800. Of course, you look at the main event and co-main event, both nice pricing if you want to go with those, either one of those. But overall, like, there's some fights like I look at the Macy Chiasson, the price is great, but I think it's a 3-round fight at the end of the day. Maybe she goes out there and gets it. I don't love the Garry Page fight in terms of a DFS product. I think it should be a nice stylistical matchup, but I think from a DFS perspective, I just don't think it's going to score well here. Main event, I mean, look, I almost want to say it's like a 60-40 type fight. But if you don't prioritize the main event, I don't have a huge argument about that. Yeah,
like it's a really difficult fight to break down because I see holes on both sides, even though we're talking about some of the top end fighters. Jiri Prochazka has a susceptibility of getting hit with leg kicks. Alex Pereira has devastating punches, but he has some chin issues as well. But where the chin issues largely due to the weight cut in the past. It's something that is to be discussed and debated, but it's very difficult. There are tons of different ways to score 600 points this week, and that's why I think like majority of lineups are going to have the main event. If you want to get different, be light on the main event. Something I don't necessarily recommend because of the pricing structure of 8,500 Pereira versus we have Prochazka sitting there at 7,700. It's mid-range, you know what I mean? Like, mid-range is very easy to fill your lineups. But let's say it's like a round 3 through 5 finish or a mediocre score because of a very methodical striking matchup. Perhaps they don't break the slate, but they still score decently well in the 80s. It's hard for me to see that fight not ending inside the distance. It really is. So I'm going to focus on it. But if I just don't have the salary, I'm okay with avoiding it. But like I say, it's a very, very tough fight. And usually when it's such a difficult fight to choose from, I move on. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And if like the majority of the people playing are going to have the fight, at least I know my lineup's going to be unique.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Of course, if you are having to watch this, I know we're having a little bit of issue on YouTube right now, but we are on Twitter, also on Facebook as well. So if you do have any questions, you line those up in the chat as well. If you want to slide in those DMs, on say on Instagram, I'll definitely get to your question. I know we got some questions that came in here early on here today. But Pete, let's get right into the main event. Of course, it is a rematch between Alex Pereira and Jiri Prochazka. Prochazka a plus 120 betting underdog, minus 145 for Alex Pereira. Pereira 8,500 on DK, $20 on FanDuel. Prochazka 7,700 on DK, $16 on FanDuel. And one of the things that I was talking to Pete before the show was, you go back and you watch that first fight. And, and one of the things of, Jiri goes for that takedown very early on in that matchup, Pete. And the way Alex defended it was by a guillotine choke. Obviously not the way he necessarily wanted to defend the takedown in that situation, but really we still saw the leg kicks. Now that was, Jiri's first fight since coming off that major shoulder injury that he had. Then we saw him come back at UFC 300. Here's what scares me about what I saw Jiri at UFC 300. He was still taking those leg kicks, and we both know that is a major component of what Alex does in the cage.
Yeah, 100%. And Jason, like I always tell you, I have my initial leans that I write down and how I think the fights are going to go, and then I dive in with tape study. Initially, I said to myself, I think I like Jiri in this rematch. Like in the first encounter, he was coming off, quoted, the worst shoulder injury of all time from Dana White. And I thought that he kind of rushed himself back. And then when you're going up against the guy who has been active in the cage, you're going to be at a disadvantage. Never mind when you don't check leg kicks, and it's a massive part of Alex Pereira's game. And you keep your hands low, going up against one of the best prolific left hook fighters in the world. He was a sucker for that combination, and it landed. And outside the UFC, we have seen Jiri Prochazka get hurt, dropped, and finished against Mo Lawal. In other fights where he's, getting hurt. Bruno Capolaza hurt him as well. I can go on and on. Volkan Ozdemir inside the UFC. He doesn't do himself any favors by keeping his hands down. I think like in lighter weight classes, you can get away with that. But once you're in this upper tier, 185 and above, everybody hits so damn hard with the small gloves that, the margin of error is very slim. So you can't always pull counter. You can't always slip and rip, and you can't depend on your footwork all the time. Your hands need to be up there because, reaction times sometimes slip. So when I picked Rakic to defeat Jiri Prochazka, I liked it, and I liked it early because I saw Rakic go out there and land like 20 unanswered leg kicks against Jiri Prochazka, who is just so heavy on that lead leg because of his rooted karate stance. There was no answer. There was no check. There was no attempt to check. There was no crashing the pocket and like meeting the leg kick with a straight right hand or a left hook. There was nothing. It was eating the kick and kind of, absorbing the shock, taking a step back and resetting. I don't like that. And yes, he switches stances really well, but like Alex Pereira can still target the other leg as well, go inside and outside. I think that I just wish that, I saw some changes to Jiri Prochazka's, his defense, like some hands up, some checking in the leg kicks. It just hasn't been there. Now, did Prochazka absorb some strikes and come back and have a hell of a round and came out in round 2 and looked even better and finished Rakic? Absolutely. But because of all these intangibles, as much as I want to pick Prochazka because I want to see these guys fight 5 times or 3 times, be the next Brandon Moreno and Davison Figueiredo, I have to go with what I'm seeing on fight film. And it's just that Prochazka has not truly addressed the problem. And it's the leg kicks. It's, flattening the tire and then punishing Prochazka when he's there with a beautiful left hook. And, I know that we have Pereira coming off of a toe injury or 2 toes that are broken, leading up into the Jamal Hill fight and from the Jamal Hill fight. I still think like Pereira's a dog, and even when he's traveling, he's sparring and he's training. I'm still gonna go with Alex Pereira here, Jason, and it's just the lean because of the fight film.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you as well. I do lean Alex in this one. It's actually, I think this is, watching the countdown show made me kind of wonder, will we see maybe Yuri's team maybe go with a little bit more of a patient approach in terms of this one than we've seen it in past years with him. I mean, when you think about Jiri Prochazka, you think about a guy that's, he's a wild man. I mean, he is going to take chances, and will he be willing to be patient, sit and wait for his opportunities in this one? And, you look at Alex, and this is a guy that he's become like, essentially like the Donald Cerrone for the UFC in 2024. Hey, we need someone to step up. Who can we go to? Well, Alex has been that guy. And, it's my guy Daniel on the podcast yesterday, we started playing this game. What happens first? Alex moves up the heavyweight to fight John Jones. Conor McGregor fights in the UFC.
I think Pereira moves up and fights John Jones. And, like, stylistically, that's the guy that will expose the hole in Pereira's game, which is the wrestling. And like you mentioned, how Prochazka shot the takedown early. And
what's on your mind right now? You crave some tacos over there?
I have no idea. It ain't Taco Tuesday over here. I think like Prochazka to lean on the wrestling is smart. And he put himself in isolation once he accepted or was going to accept this fight. No food, no water, no light, just in the dark. He should have focused on checking leg kicks and, keeping his hands up. I think, like, as much as I want this to be a trilogy, he makes too many mistakes to go up against Alex Pereira. In my humble opinion, I do worry I do worry about the power that Prochazka possesses because that beautiful straight right hand. He has like one of the nastiest straight right hands in the business. And I still worry about Pereira's chin. I do think largely that was because of the weight cut. But yeah, I can really see Jon Jones accepting a fight with Pereira because of what Pereira's accomplished in such a short time. And now he's talking about it's a multiple champion, multi-division champion. And it's just going to look better on Jon Jones's resume. And it's an easy fight for Jon Jones.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see when Jon Jones actually does step inside the octagon. Maybe it's going to be November, maybe December. We'll see what happens in terms of that one. Now, of course, our co-main event was a matchup that just came together within the last 2 weeks. Brian Ortega taking on Diego Lopes. Of course, initially was going to be at 145 pounds. Brian Ortega, as reported by Ariel Helwani earlier today, had been bulking up to move up to 155, potentially to fight UFC 306 at the Spear. His team ends up calling Diego Lopes' team at 3:30 this morning, local time in Las Vegas, saying, look, we're not going to be able to make 145 pounds. We're at 151. We're cutting off this weight cut. We do this fight at 155. Diego Lopes' team says, yes, we'll go ahead and do this. And, of course, both these guys made 155. I watched the weigh-in video for Brian Ortega when he stepped on the scale. The body language wasn't great. Looking at his body language, just did not look very good with him here. But when I think about this matchup, before the weigh-in aspect of this matchup, Pete, my thought was, if you tell me this fight plays on the feet, I do like Diego Lopes in this spot. Big step in competition for Diego Lopes when you think about who he's fought throughout his career into the UFC and now in this opportunity. What scares me about Diego Lopes is Brian Ortega taking him down, putting him on his back. What can he do off his back? And the fact is, Brian Ortega, in his last 5 fights, has recorded at least 1 takedown.
Yeah, so it is a tremendous step up in competition. Like, let's just say it is what it is, right? Like, Brian Ortega's fought for the belt. Brian Ortega's fought the who's who within the division. Diego Lopes is the new guy on the block. And, debuting on short notice against Movsar Evloev, damn near submitting him with multiple things, an arm bar, a knee bar, hurting Evloev on the feet. He looked damn good. And I remember watching that fight and saying, oh my God, I'm a big Diego Lopes fan. I cannot wait to bet him when, in his next fights. And he was 8,300 against Gavin Tucker. Bet him there. Worked out. 7,900 against Sabatini. Worked out. 8,500 against Sadiq Youssef. Worked out. Now he's 8,400, right? Like, so from a price standpoint, it's a step up in competition. I would have much rather him be the dog in this situation because there is value on Brian Ortega. I recognize that Brian Ortega is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu phenom as well. Training under Henner and Huron. He's just a fantastic Jiu-Jitsu guy with amazing triangle. Hence the nickname T-City. But he also has a very good guillotine. He's very well-rounded. We saw him submit Yair Rodriguez with an arm triangle choke. It was a little modified because of Yair turning on his side, but it still got the job done. My issue with Brian Ortega is that, like, the hands are okay. I don't think he's got power like some people do. Like, I don't view him as a power striker, and I view his striking defense as poor. I think he's super hittable on the feet. You go back and you watch, his fight against Yair Rodriguez, the most recent one, he was getting lit up, and he got hurt and rocked with hands from Yair Rodriguez. And, Yair's best, but Yair's a dangerous striker, but the best pieces to Yair's game are his kicks. I think, like, Ortega's just taken so much damage from me, and I don't like the way he reacts when he gets hit with big punches, that I'm going to be leaning towards Diego Lopes to win here. I think the power is the difference maker. Obviously, we saw Diego Lopes on the Contender Series against Joe Anderson Brito get grounded and be unable to submit Joe Anderson Brito or really do anything, and he was kind of stifled in that situation. Brian Ortega can get takedowns, but, like, I don't view him as like a guy that'll go out there and sandbag his opponent and just kind of just lay on top of him and win rounds that way. He can get some takedowns. He can attempt some dangerous submissions. I think that Diego Lopes's jiu-jitsu is at least to the standard where he can survive Brian Ortega's attempts. I worry about the durability of Ortega from punches, and then just like he seems like frail, a guy that like always has injuries. And you think about his shoulder dislocating against Yair Rodriguez in the first encounter. Now you're talking about having to change the fight to 155 pounds because you were 151 pounds, unwilling and unable to make 146 pounds. Could the extra weight help Brian Ortega from a strategic standpoint, getting takedowns, staying on top? Absolutely, 100%. If you're going to back Ortega, him being a dog to me doesn't make much sense, like from what he's accomplished. And I almost feel like Vegas is trying to just tempt people to get behind Ortega even more because he is priced as the dog. I do, however, view Diego Lopes as just like, this is like a changing of the guard, in my opinion. Like Diego Lopes is the fresh new guy on the block, has really good experience for his age as well. Granted, not against the same type of competition and names, but I think like stylistically, he can hurt Ortega on the feet. He might even run through Brian Ortega and get him out of there early. But I'm going to be picking Diego Lopes to win a decision here. I think we're going to be having the argument damage versus control, and I think I'm going to, I'm going to lie with Diego Lopes getting it done here at 8,400.
I'm on the opposite side of this one. I'm going with Brian Ortega in this one because I think he's going to get the takedowns, and I just think that Diego Lopes on his back trying to defend what T-City is going to do, I think it's going to cause some problems with him. The weight obviously does, I think, change some kind of things. I think it's going to come down to, what's the hydration process kind of look like here for Brian Ortega in terms of, like I said, if you watch him weigh in, man, that body language just didn't come off very good. But who knows? By the time they do the ceremonial weigh-ins tonight, and you see him, maybe you change your philosophy there a little bit. But I think it's a matchup where I think in terms of Diego Lopes, I think from a GPP aspect, I do like him in that spot just because, potentially going out there and getting a knockout, which by the way is only plus 180. The decision prop on both sides of this equation, I think, is also very kind of sneaky. Plus 300 for Brian Ortega, plus 400 for Diego Lopes. But look, it's a situation for, and obviously we all know why this matchup came together. But for Brian Ortega, and he said it yesterday or the day before, there's not a lot to win here for him. This is kind of a lose-lose type of situation for him where Diego Lopes, like all of a sudden you get a win tomorrow night. I mean, are we talking maybe you're taking on Yair Rodriguez at UFC 306?
Yeah, that's what I mean, man. Like I feel like from like a hunger standpoint, it's clearly in Diego Lopes's favor. Like you can't just be complacent standing across from Diego Lopes because I think he's just so hungry. He's going to push to get the finish no matter what, from submissions to knockouts to everything. I've never really been an Ortega guy, so maybe I'm an Ortega hater. I recognize his skills, but if you go back and you watch a lot of his fights, he loses rounds frequently, and he's kind of like a slow starter. If this was a 5-round fight, I'd be picking Brian Ortega most likely, because I do think that as the fight goes on, he starts to build. I feel like it's going to be too little too late in this situation. He'll lose the first two, and then he'll win the third.
Let's move over to our next matchup. It's going to be at 205 pounds. We've got Anthony Smith taking on Roman Dolidze. Dolidze is a minus 140 betting favorite, plus 115 for Anthony Smith. Dolidze, 8,400 DK, $19 on FanDuel. Anthony Smith, 7,800 on DK, $12 on FanDuel. Kind of odd to see the guy that's moving up from middleweight to light heavyweight is the favorite. In terms of this one, Anthony Smith had some comments this week basically saying, what happened to all these 205-pound fighters? I also know that there's, I guess, a lot of fighters behind the scenes that like to complain about how much money Anthony Smith makes the matchup here. But, look, you come Anthony Smith's last matchup, people were down on him. Hey, you had Victor Petrino. He was going to be the guy that's going to take the instant spot. Anthony Smith goes out there and win. I'm interested to see what these guys look like at the ceremonial weigh-ins and just see if I don't think we're going to see much of a size difference between these two guys.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I view Roman Dolidze, like a 205er. I mean, he's fought at 205 in the past. I thought at middleweight, he's a pretty big guy. He may be better in this situation because he's not having to cut the weight. From a skill standpoint, I just have always not been the biggest Roman Dolidze fan. I recognize he has power. I recognize that he has some sneaky jiu-jitsu as well. Very good when the fight hits the mat. He attacks the legs decently well as well. it's the output, right? Like, his last fight against Nasruddin Imavov, we saw him get hurt early, and within a 25-minute fight, he landed 59 strikes and 34 significant strikes. Like, that's pretty poor. Like, it's very, very poor. He had a ton of control time because, he struggles, so he decides to, put his opponents against the cage best as he can to avoid getting pieced up at range and at distance. I don't know, Jason. I think that Roman Dolidze is just going to be outstruck in this situation. And, we have Anthony Smith, who's suffered many defeats, especially of late inside the octagon. But he did just kind of fraud check Vitor Petrino, go in there and submit him inside of round 1. And he has won a hard-fought decision against Ryan Spann after, picking up a first-round win over Ryan Spann. So I think that Ryan Spann, if you can avoid getting finished by Ryan Spann in round 1, I think you can avoid getting finished or hurt from Roman Dolidze. And not to put it in MMA math terms, but I just think that Anthony Smith's long-range attacks, his straight punches, his jab and his cross, in combination with his calf kicks, will disrupt the rhythm of Roman Dolidze. Not to mention that Anthony Smith is not a fish on the mat. He can, attempt submissions. He has very, very sneaky, underrated jiu-jitsu. His wrestling is probably his weakest point, but it's not a really weak link. I don't see that Roman Dolidze having the massive advantage in the takedown department. The only time we've seen Roman Dolidze really pick up takedowns, he landed 3 against John Allen, 1 against Trevin Giles, and 5 against Laureano Staropoli. But, like, I don't know. I view Anthony Smith's takedown defense and his well-roundedness a little bit more than those guys. So I'm going to be picking Anthony Smith here to win a decision. The one thing that I can say about Anthony Smith is I do not like how he responds to receiving damage. When he gets hit or hurt with a big shot, he really shells up and he kind of goes into fetal position. It's good that he protects himself at all times, but, like, it's not good body language because it's like he really, really wilts on the pressure. So, like, pressure fighters have been able to go out there and break him, which is why I thought Ryan Spann in their first encounter was going to do well. But it was a step up in competition. I view this as a step up in competition for Roman Dolidze. Even though Anthony Smith has 19 defeats within his career, I think that he's better than what his record says. A lot of those defeats were early on within his career. I still think that he can hang on here. He's a very cerebral and intelligent fighter. And I just don't think that Dolidze has the gas to really keep up with what's coming back his way. So give me Anthony Smith to win a decision.
Yeah, I like Anthony Smith in this one as well. And by the way, Anthony Smith is one of 2 fighters who has not stepped on the scale to this point, the other one being Jiri Prochazka. So I've got the old X machine lined up here, so I'll pay attention to see when those guys do step on the scale there. Then we got a matchup in the female division where, and by the way, Jiri Prochazka just did step on the scale, made weight at 204.5 pounds. So our main event is now official, but we got a bantamweight matchup between Bueno Silva and Macy Chiasson, and this is a straight up pick 'em. But when you look over in DraftKings, broken price this week: $8,800 for Silva, $7,400 for Chiasson. Chiasson $13 on FanDuel, $16 for Bueno Silva. And I mean, look, and Pete, when you look at the price point of DraftKings, obviously the $7,400 for Macy Chiasson is going to stick out to everyone as a thought process of, oh man, maybe potentially be able to save some salary here. But it's one of those things of, as I ultimately look at this matchup, if you tell me there's a stoppage in this matchup, I think it's on the Bueno Silva side, and I think it's likely a submission finish by her. But I do see the takedown upside of Macy Chiasson if you're looking to save some salary.
Yeah, so, I mean, I agree with you. I think when people compare the odds to salaries, you're going to see that Macy Chiasson here at 7,400, one of the best values on the slate given the odds. Now, that's because a ton of money came on Macy. The initial odds did not have her in this range at all. I don't view Macy Chiasson and Mayra Bueno Silva as a pick'em or close to it. I think that Mayra Bueno Silva should have been a mediocre favorite. So I think that the odds kind of overcorrected because of the misprice. I will say that stylistically, Macy's a very talented fighter, very tall and long and rangy for the division. A fighter that's not really comfortable with striking though, And like for somebody who has so many physical intangibles, she should develop her straight punches, her front kicks, just keeping people at range. Instead, her game is crashing the pocket, clinching, incorporating takedowns to get top position and control time to possibly work towards a submission finish. She looked really, really good in her previous matchup against Pannie Kianzad. I think her best win, clearly, Jason, in my opinion, is against Norma Dumont. Norma Dumont's a very physically imposing fighter, very, very good in the takedown department, very good at striking as well. So I know that was a lot of people viewed that as a win for Dumont, but it goes down as a win for Macy Chiasson. So, like, I think that Macy wanting to get the fight to the mat is kind of playing with fire. You know what I mean? Like, getting a split decision over Norma Dumont, it's a win is a win. She had 8.5 minutes of control time and 6 takedowns. But, like, I don't know, man. I think that, like, in certain fights, you should steer away from putting yourself in danger, right? Like, that's Mayra Bueno Silva's wheelhouse. You want to take her down, she's going to wave you on and come in my guard. Okay, I'm going to hit you with an armbar. Or if you're going to be shooting a sloppy takedown, I'm going to hit you with a ninja choke. Or if you get sloppy on the mat, I'm going to work a back take and try to, submit you with a rear naked choke. I think that Mayra Bueno Silva can also go out there and offensively wrestle just to kind of disrupt the game plan of Macy Chiasson. I mean, we did see Mayra Bueno Silva take down Raquel Pennington 3 times, who Pennington is a well-versed mixed martial artist and had 10 minutes of control time. I always view fighters that had a step up in competition that they're going to take something positively from that matchup, just because I know how it is. Like, if you go in there and you have a tough fight, win or lose, you're going to learn from it. Never mind when you have a 25-minute title fight. And now that she's coming back to earth to fight like a normal fighter within the division, I think she's going to take some components from it, and I don't think she was 100%. She's definitely the meaner fighter here, Mayra Bueno Silva over Macy Chiasson. Macy getting finished in a fight she was winning against Irina Aldana with an up kick to the liver is something that's just never going to sit well with me, Jason. I view that as a complete fluke. I view that as something that should never happen. If that hurt her so bad, fall on top of Irina Aldana. You still are on top position, on your way to winning a decision. But when to get up kicked to the body and then turn around and wilt to now, it's just something I can't get out of my head. So, like, it's hard for me to trust her because she seems fluky and flaky. I'm going to be picking Mayra Bueno Silva here to pick up a submission win over Macy Chiasson, but I understand why people are value hunting and are going to target Macy at 7,400.
Yeah, if you want that submission prop, that is plus 300 for Bueno Silva to win via submission. And kind of interesting because when you think about female mixed martial arts, more times than not, it does go over 2.5 rounds. And just looking over at Best Fight Odds, the over 2.5 rounds, there's 3 books right now that have a line out there on this. Bet Rivers minus 195, FanDuel minus 182, Betway minus 188. So, that's actually not a bad prop bet out there when we're talking about female MMA, Pete.
Not at all. And one more thing that, like, as a coach, if I saw Macy wilt to an up kick to the liver, guess what we're doing, Jason? In the clinch, we're doing lots of knees to the liver, and we're going to go with that left hook to the liver. Just because, like, some people are really bad at absorbing shots to the body. For whatever reason or not. Like, liver shots and solar plexus shots are the worst to deal with. But some fighters deal with it worse than others. And if I saw that on Fight Film, guess what we're doing? Tons of body work. She's soft to the body, rip the body. And Mayra Bueno Silva is really mean. So give me Bueno Silva to finish her.
And Macy Chiasson has got a takedown in each of her last 6 matchups. She had 2 against Kianzad. She had 3 against Aldana, 6 against Dumont, 1 against Pennington, which was a loss, by the way. She had 2 against Renault, 3 against Shayna Young. Last time she didn't get a takedown was against Lena Landsberg back in 2019. And to me, that is definitely her path to get the job done here tomorrow night in Las Vegas. Their opening matchup of the pay-per-view is Ian Machado Garry taking on Michael Page. Garry is a minus 150 betting fair, plus 125 for MVP. Garry is a $200 DK, $17 on FanDuel. For Page, he's $8,000 DK, $15 on FanDuel. And Pete, this is stylistically, it's a matchup that I'm interested to watch. from a fantasy score perspective, I don't know if it does very well. I look at it, and if you tell me one of these guys goes out there and gets 90 plus points, I think it's more likely that it's on the Ian Garry side because of a grappling upside.
Yeah, so I'm with you. And I think that a lot of people just automatically want to fade Ian Garry. I get it. I'm not a big Ian Garry fan at all. You have to separate personal opinion to what you see on fight film. Do I think that he's cringy? Absolutely. Am I a fan of his persona and his gimmick? No, I'm not at all. Also, I hate his voice. But, Ian Garry is very skilled. Michael Venom Page, extremely talented, usually the trash talker in certain matchups. So it was kind of odd to see him be the one that was a little mature in the press conference. I think that stylistically, Michael Venom Page just he slows fights down because of his movement, because of his feints and his fakes, his footwork. It's just like a Stephen Thompson fight. You're going to have incredible moments, but majority of the fight's going to be a lull because they're a counter fighter, waiting for the first mistake, waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike. They're not going to go out there and volume strike. That's just not how they do it. It's point fighting. From the karate background that I come from, it's the same thing. That's exactly where Michael Venom Page and Stephen Thompson come from. It's hit and not be hit. So I think it's going to temper the volume from both sides. I do think that Ian Garry has some dynamic skills within this matchup to separate himself. He can chop low kicks really well. He has excellent Muay Thai, so it's not like he's a fish out of water, standing up. He's a very good striker. I think that he's the more complete Muay Thai striker for sure, because we see Michael Venom Page be very basic. Like his blitz is amazing. His blitz forward, his right hand is hidden. He hits almost everybody with it. He hit Kevin Holland with it like 5 times, had him on wobbly legs multiple times because of it. And it's the nothing to something, the blitz forward, that is very difficult for people to deal with. I do think that Ian Machado Garry just does not stay at range as much. He has good footwork. I think that he's going to, push Michael Venom Page against the cage, make this a clinch fight, incorporate some takedowns is what I would say, because if he took Neil Magny down twice, I reckon he's going to go out there and try to put Michael Venom Page on his back as well. So I look at the Neil Magny fight. Neil Magny ate a ton of leg kicks in that bout. And Ian Garry posted 85 fantasy points. I kind of see this being like the Jeff Neal Ian Garry fight where, Ian Garry wins. He's in the driver's seat. He avoids some big shots, scores 60 fantasy points. Could he finish Michael Venom Page on the mat? Absolutely. Especially because, from a submission standpoint, I think that Michael Venom Page is able to be exploited in that situation. We saw Kevin Holland get on top, rain down some beautiful elbows from top position. Holland's an opportunistic submission fighter, but really doesn't utilize his true skills within the cage. I can see a smart, cerebral fighter in Ian Machado Garry just kind of hanging on. And instead of getting too aggressive, looking for the finish, he'll just be okay with being in top position to win the rounds and let the clock expire. So give me Ian Machado Garry here to win a decision at 8,200. I'm going to see what the submission odds are, just because I think, I like to bet fight by fight. And I'll probably throw small money on Ian Garry to win via submission, just because I know he's been training at Shoot the Box, training with Charles Oliveira a lot. He, on the regional scene, has a well-rounded skill set that necessarily doesn't shine all the time in the UFC. But I think that Michael Venom Page might force his hand. You know what I mean? He's going to get hit with some big shots. You go, okay, he's really fast. I'm going to just make this ugly, clinch with them. More likely than not, it's a decision win. But, I'll have to see what these round prop odds are for submissions, and I'll throw some small money on it. But give me Ian Garry, unfortunately, to win a decision here at 8,200.
He is plus 1,000 to win via submission in this one.
I mean, it's worth $10. You know what I mean? It's worth anything. Small bucks. It's just because, I think he just hasn't shown it yet. And really hasn't happened to Michael Venom Page. So I view this as a matchup I'm okay with getting away from for majority of my lineups. Usually 8,200, 8,000, I'm not. This one I am. You got a karate fighter involved with it. Slower pace fight. Mediocre score.
It's one of these things, and you can obviously talk about this a lot, is we have seen Macado Garry go from, he has gone to various gyms over the past couple of years. He feels like he is, and watching the Countdown show, he kind of talked about he's finally found the place that he wants to be at, but preparing for Michael Page isn't like just preparing for any old fighter. There's not many guys you want to, bring in Raymond Daniels? Bringing Stephen Thompson? If you're going to accurately prepare for Michael Page, those are the styles you got to bring in. And that's what that would concern me, is like early on in that fight of how does he kind of deal with that unique counter striking that Michael Page brings.
Yeah, if you never sparred a karate fighter, you don't want to be learning on the fly. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to be in there like trying to adjust. It's tough. It is tough, and I've had a ton of success because I'm the one with the karate style. And there's people out there, but I don't necessarily know about in Brazil how popular point fighting is. But yeah, immediately from the bell, I just think that Garry needs to close the space. It is the big octagon, right, Jason? So that does favor the karate fighter. So I don't mind the Michael Venom Page underdog call. I still think if he wins, it's a low score. I don't think that he'll finish Ian Garry. I hope he does. I hope he shuts his mouth, but I don't think that happens.
Yeah, I don't love the fantasy score upside for Michael Page, but who knows? Maybe. And the other thing is, look, we're talking Michael Page is 36 years old. this isn't the Michael Page of 8-9 years ago. It's a little bit of a different story here. Then next up, we got Joe Pyfer taking on Marc-Andre Barriault. Pyfer is a 3-1 betting favorite, plus 240 for Marc-Andre Barriault. Pyfer on DK, $9,000, $20 on FanDuel. Barriault, $7,200 on DK. And $10 on FanDuel. And this is one of those matchups I've been kind of looking at all week. And I think my general thought on this process is, if you're looking to save salary and you're kind of looking at that 7,300 and below, Marc-Andre Barriault is someone that does intrigue me, but I'm just going to put an asterisk on this. He's got to survive the opening round, and I think that's going to be the question with Joe Pyfer is, we've seen what this guy can do early on in the fights, but the problem I have is, can he create a style where, cardio may not be an issue in the second or third round, Pete?
Yeah, fair points, right? Like, when I saw Joe Pyfer get matched up against Marc-Andre Barriault, I scratched my head and go, well, that's kind of similar to an opponent that would give Joe Pyfer problems. And hear me out. The reason is because Barriault's a pace pusher. He's a builder. Like, as the fight goes on, he gets stronger. That's kind of what happened in Pyfer's last fight against Jack Hermanson, where Pyfer's really hot out the gate, and then as the fight went on, he just didn't have the cardio to continue. Granted, that's a 25-minute fight, and against a true veteran of Jack Hermanson. But there are some similarities from the style, right? Like, you do see, like, if Pyfer doesn't find the finish, this could be a situation where Marc-Andre Barriault starts to build into the fight, and you start seeing these big, massive favorite odds of Joe Pyfer start to shrink and diminish as the fight goes on. It could be a live betting situation. It really could. I still think that Joe Pyfer is the guy to win in this situation. And I think that he can make this really easy by incorporating his wrestling and his grappling. I think that's the true way to just, you start struggling in a matchup, take Marc-Andre Barriault down. Utilize your good jiu-jitsu as well. I like the fact that Pyfer competes on grappling tournaments and grappling super fights, something that me and my team do a lot, and that everybody's starting to do it more, and I really like it. I think that Marc-Andre Barriault's style, for the most part, is engaging in firefights, but lacking power. So, like, if you lack power and you're engaging in firefights, when you're going up against the guy who has knockout power, that's a dangerous game to play. I think that Pyfer can go out there and win in round 1 or 2 over Marc-Andre Barriault. And I think that's probably what's going to happen. I think that his combinations are great. It's just that if you look and you see like some of these box scores, not the best output, and not necessarily because he needs to, but like first round finish, 14 significant strikes. First round finish, 14 significant strikes. Second round finish over Razak Al-Hassan, 26 significant strikes. So like power punchers looking for that perfect moment, that kind of fits Joe Pyfer. This could be a situation where Pyfer has and lands the better shots, Barriault closes the gap, tries to put Pyfer against the cage, a lot of reversals against the cage. And this is how I'm going to view this, Jason, is like I like Pyfer early. I don't mind Barriault as a complete punt to possibly win a decision. I mean, he did score 49 against Chris Curtis. I think that, he has to be a little bit more careful in a situation against Joe Pyfer than Chris Curtis. But if Barriault survives round 1, Pyfer could win a decision here and win round 1, win the first half of round 2, and then start to kind of fade as the fight goes on. So, I'll take it fight by fight, but I might throw some small money on Pyfer via decision just because, sometimes people want to prove they can go 15 minutes too. You know what I mean? This could be the situation where he just is mindful and very, very calculated and goes out there and picks apart Marc-Andre Barriault for 15 minutes. But the pick is Pyfer.
Yeah, I mean, the pick is Pyfer for me as well, but I would just say I do have concerns if the finish does not come in the first 5 to 8 minutes. What does the rest? And maybe Marc-Andre Barriault maybe wins round 2, round 3 to go out there. By the way, I just saw something kind of interesting. The law enforcement officers have raided the school of Khabib Nurmagomedov's father. Interesting.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah, it's in relation to of a student of theirs. Interesting. Just saw that come across the old X timeline. Is that as I'm sitting here waiting to see if Anthony Smith is going to make weight as we are.
What's up with that? Dude?
He's got 6 minutes to make weight here, so we're going to see if he does step on the scale here. But yeah, that should be something we're paying attention to in terms of that one. Next up, we got Cub Swanson taking on Andrei Fili. Cub Swanson is a 2-1 betting underdog minus 250 for Andrei Fili. Fili $8,600 on DK, $19 on FanDuel. Swanson $7,600 on DK, $11 on FanDuel. Cub Swanson did make weight. He has never missed weight in his UFC career. And this is a fight that me and Pete were, discussing right before the show. And, when you think of, when I think of this matchup, I just think it's a lot closer than the betting odds say it is. From a GPP perspective, though, Pete, I don't know if I love it from a fantasy score upside.
I'm with you. I'm with you completely. Now, listen, hear me out. I think the matchup to be made for just a Legends tour for WEC throwback would have been the Battle of California between Cub Swanson and Uriah Faber. And I know Cubs competed at featherweight. Uriah competed within bantamweight and featherweight. Most of his best work was at featherweight. That's a fight that I think should have happened. That's something that I was interested as a throwback. Now you have a pupil of, Uriah Faber going in there against Cub Swanson. And, Andrei Fili's a guy that I wonder if we've always overvalued. We're a fan of Andrei Fili. I really like him. I can't tell why I like him so much. I root for him like crazy. I think that his skills are great. His offensive skills are some of the best within the division. Very good striker, has underrated wrestling and grappling, doesn't really put out a ton of volume in fights, and you always have to be on the edge of your seat worrying about his chin. Is his chin going to hold up? I mean, for a guy that's pretty young, he's grown up within the UFC, but he's been hurt a lot in his UFC career. You know what I mean? You go back, he was knocked out against Yair Rodriguez. He was dropped against Miles Jiri, dropped against Charles Jourdain, dropped and knocked out against Joyner Brito, dropped against Nathaniel Wood, dropped and knocked out against Dan Ige. For as much of a sniper and technically skilled fighter that Andrei Fili is, it's almost like he bites down on the mouthpiece and he just enjoys scrapping so much that he gets in firefights. Now, I would think that his volume should be much better than Cub Swanson, but it's really not. I'm looking at some of these numbers, and I went back and watched a ton of these fights, and he makes up for his volume in striking with takedowns. Cub Swanson's a guy that has really good takedown defense and some really surprising judo. And this is a story that I'll share to our listeners. I was 22 years old. I went out to New Mexico and trained and lived with Cowboy Cerrone and the entire team at Jackson Wink. I was a young kid coming into my own, no ground game, had hard sparring out there. I had a war with Cub Swanson, who threw me on my head probably about 12 times, and like 2 rounds. I think we did back-to-back rounds. That's one of the hardest sparring sessions I've had. And I remember just getting tuned up. Cub Swanson was tuning me up because I didn't know what was coming. He was blending his strikes with his takedowns. He hit me with head and arm throw like 6 times. And that he was fighting some of the best within the world. And I was just coming to my own. But I remember that training session. And because of that, that's not the reason why I'm picking him here. I just view this fight as it's closer than what the odds suggest. I think that Cub's durability has been pretty good outside the body kick from Giga Chikadze and the leg kicks from Jonathan Martinez. I don't see Andrei Fili doing that. He could chop the legs, yes, but every time Andrei Fili fights, it tends to be just a boxing scrap for the most part, like because he enjoys to throw hands. Cub Swanson's explosive combinations, I think, can hurt Andrei Fili. I honestly wouldn't be surprised to see Cub Swanson knock out Andrei Fili. And if this does go the distance, that we've seen Cub Swanson throw with better volume. And if Andrei Fili is trying to take him to the mat, trying to submit Cub Swanson is usually the best part. Even though Swanson's a black belt, like you can catch him in a guillotine when he's slipping. With all that being said, I'm going to back some veterans this week as underdogs. There's a ton of live underdogs, like we already talked about it. Jiri Prochazka, Brian Ortega, Macy Chiasson, Michael Venom Page. The first underdog that I'm actually going to pick is going to be Cub Swanson here to win a decision or KO Andrei Fili. I may be on an island. I may look really stupid, but on a very difficult fight card to predict, I'm going to go with Cub Swanson here at 7,600.
I don't mind that call there, and I agree with what you're saying there. I mean, I just do wonder, do we maybe see Andrei Fili go with a more of a grappling wrestling attack in terms of this one? We all know where he trains at. Obviously, he's around a bunch of wrestlers every single day there at Team Alpha Male. So, it's just one of those things of, I think if Swanson was maybe $200-$300 less, I might be a little bit more interested in that price tag, but I definitely understand the thought process of that ceiling upside if he can go out there and get a knockout victory. By the way, Anthony Smith has made weight at 206 pounds. He needed the dreaded black cover to make weight. He needed the cover.
Now that fight's on short notice for both of them, right?
Correct. Yeah, I would imagine Anthony Smith. I would bet you he probably walks around 220-ish. I would imagine. Yeah. Dolidze probably walking around at 200, I would imagine. Maybe a little bit more, depending on how good he is at cutting weights. But he has made weight at 206 pounds. We did have a fighter miss weight. That was Gene Silva, missed weight at 147.5 for his featherweight matchup against Charles Jourdain. The fight is going forward. He has been fined 20% of his purse. Of course, Jourdain at minus 115 betting favorite. Silva minus 105. Jourdain A300 DK $14 on FanDuel. Silva 700 DK and $14 on FanDuel. And why do I just feel like every time I back Charles Jourdain, it just doesn't work out for me? Like, I for whatever reason, I was thinking, okay, here comes a Jourdain knockout, and it just never happens.
He's difficult, man. He's one of these untrustworthy, volatile options. And it's just like whenever you hop off the train, he gets a win, and it's just like, my God, dude. When it comes to Charles Jourdain, I think that he's very skilled, and it's only in a striking standpoint because, he is what he is. He enjoys getting into a firefight. Sometimes he's a slow starter. But, I do think that he's the more seasoned guy in this matchup, for sure. I don't like the fact that Gene Silva missed weight. I think that Charles Jourdain's UFC experience, will serve him well here. He has a very sneaky submission game. He will catch you slipping and submit you with a beautiful guillotine. He did it against Ricardo Ramos. He did it against Lando Venata. How I see this fight going is very similar to how the Andre Ewell fight went. Silva's going to come out there and throw heavy shots trying to finish Charles Jourdain. I see Charles Jourdain being okay and surviving and just kind of putting a little bit more volume out there. And maybe he might even be a little bit more careful because of the power coming back his way It was kind of like one-way traffic against Andrei Ewell at times. I think that Charles Jourdain is going to, look better in round 2 and in round 3, and he's going to win himself a decision here. Like we've seen him against Gracie score 93, but like that was a pretty easy matchup. I view this as a very competitive matchup, but one that Charles Jourdain does well at. So give me Jourdain to win a decision. Do I worry about Gene Silva, like his power? Yes. I probably like Gene Silva in finish-only markets because like I just don't see him as a 15-minute fighter over Charles Jourdain. Don't really have good reasons as to why I like Jourdain in this spot other than, his variety and well-rounded striking attacks of punches and kicks. Can fight out of both stances, has a high guard at times, hasn't shown any problems when it comes to durability. I mean, I remember when everybody in the world thought he was going to get knocked out against Doo Ho Choi, and that did not happen. So this could be a situation where he knocks out Gene Silva, the weight cut being a reason. But give me Jourdain to win the decision here at 8,300.
Yeah, I'm going with Jourdain here. And by the way, if you look at that TKO to KO prop for Charles Jourdain, plus 500, plus 180 to win via decision. On the other side, Silva plus 350 win via decision. Or excuse me, plus 350 win by TKO KO, plus 275 to out there and win by decision. Now we have our biggest betting favorite on this card, Payton Talbott, a 20-1 betting favorite, taking on Yanis here. Yanis is on the other side, plus 950, 6,400 DK, $8 on FanDuel. Talbot, 9,800 on DraftKings, $23 on FanDuel. I can't recall even like Shevchenko ever being 9,800. I mean, look, from the betting perspective, you can't even touch this minus 2,000. I mean, you got, if you're playing this one, you're going prop game hunting, and it's one of those things for me, and I think this should, in theory, this should be a showcase fight matchup for Payton Talbott. But like, to me, it all comes down to is, can you put together a lineup with Payton Talbott that you like when you're talking about nearly spending $10,000 of your $50,000 salary on DraftKings?
I'm with you, man. I'm with you. I think that like Payton Talbott's clearly going to win here against Yanis Ghemmouri, but like we've seen stranger things happen. MMA is very hard to back crazy favorites like this because fighters can get disqualified. Fighters can lose points, get deducted points for fouls. Fighters can get hurt. They can get a cut. They can just, so many things can happen in an MMA fight. That's why, like, when lines get completely overblown, I don't recommend getting behind them all that much. Now, with all that being said, Payton Talbott's 9,800. There's a lot of dogs that are barking, like, there's definitely a way to put him in your lineup. I think he gets 100 points, but he has shown in the past that in matchups against grapplers, you got to temper your expectations because he scored 68 against Nick Aguirre. In his matchup against Cameron Simon, he scored 113. I think he's just going to pick apart Ghemmouri, his aggressiveness, his striking, his dexterity with his legs, everything just checks every box out there for me. I really like Payton Talbott. It's just a salary play. Like, are you comfortable with it? I'm probably not. But somebody's got to roster him, and I'll tell you what, it's an automatic win for Payton Talbott. As automatic wins can come in MMA, Payton Talbott should win here. But yeah, it's just if you have the salary or not. I have no interest in playing Ghemmouri, even though he's 6,400. I think that's more impressive than the 9,800 because, like, I think we've seen 9,800 in the past. But Ghemmouri at 64, I don't think we've seen anything 6,400 before. That's kind of insane to me. But, yeah, I don't think that he scores all that well. I mean, he scored 18 against Gomez, and that went 3 rounds. He might not even score a single point against Payton Talbott here.
Yeah, I mean, look, Talbot should go out there. If you look at the prop bets, TKO KO minus 150, sub plus 600, Decision plus 200. I would probably, I understand why maybe you just take the one minus 150, but maybe just go an inside the distance prop on him. Maybe a better position there. But yeah, this should be a Payton Talbott. I think when we're talking about GPPs, it's just a matter of roster construction of how you put it in there. Next up, we got a female matchup. We got Michelle Waterson-Gomez taking on Gillian Robertson. Gillian Robertson is a minus 185 betting fair, plus 150 for Waterson-Gomez. Gomez, 7,500 DK, $12 on FanDuel for Gillian. She's 8,700 DK and $18 on FanDuel. And Pete, this is I do wonder, could tomorrow night be the last time we see Michelle Waterson-Gomez inside the UFC octagon?
I'm with you, man. I feel really bad because I want to pick Michelle Waterson-Gomez. My pre-tape study, I was like, oh, I'm going to pick Waterson-Gomez because, like, I remember in my brain we had Gillian Robertson at times just get picked apart on the feet. And we saw Michelle Waterson, her early career, keeping people at bay with a beautiful side kick to the body, beautiful round kicks to the head and body, excellent karate skills. And I'm like, okay, I think stylistically, like, we can see Michelle Waterson-Gomez go out there and just keep her at bay, be the matador while Robertson's the bull. And in addition to that, like, I think that Waterson's takedown defense is pretty solid. She, similar to Cub Swanson, has beautiful head and arm throws. Like, she'll go out there and she'll toss people on their head all the time. The issue is that when you go for a head and arm throw, it's a big no-no. It's a big no-no. Like, I remember, like, my wrestling coaches are like, don't you ever do that. Because, like, you're exposing yourself. And you are allowing your opponent to work towards taking your back, too. You have to be very good at it, which she is. But you're susceptible of the person sneaking out, getting their head out, and taking your back and working towards a rear naked choke or putting you in a compromising situation. And also, if you go to head and arm throw somebody and people just sag, they're able to just, get an easy takedown because you totally turn your back. I think Gillian Robertson's shown improvements, right? Like, she really has shown improvements, and she's proven inside and outside the UFC octagon to be committed to the game. She is taking grappling super fights, and she's doing damn well. She beat and submitted Rose Namajunas with a back take into a rear naked choke. Rose Namajunas submitted Michelle Waterson. So, like, that to me is impressive. And you talked about Rose Namajunas being a former champ. Like, I watched that and I'm like, oh man, either Rose Namajunas has fallen from grace or Robertson's just that damn good on the mat. I think her submission skills are some of the best we've seen from women's MMA. And then she goes out there and she has another grappling match against a very good wrestler in Montana De La Rosa. Montana De La Rosa doesn't utilize her best skills inside the octagon, but we saw Gillian Robertson go out there and look dominant again. I'm picking Gillian Robertson here, and I think it's just like another changing of the guard where, like, Waterson-Gomez has the skills to win. But when I read an article, Jason, and I told you this pre-show, that Waterson-Gomez says, I'm finally fighting a fighter that isn't afraid to grapple with me. That made me scratch my head more than I've ever scratched my head. I go, what? She goes, I've been fighting power punchers my past several matchups. She's not wrong. She has. And she goes, I'm looking forward to finally fighting somebody who's not afraid to grapple me. Waterson-Gomez has very good jiu-jitsu, but we've seen her get subbed against Amanda Lemos. We've seen her get subbed against Rose Namajunas. I think she's going to get subbed here against Gillian Robertson. And we're going to be talking about, like, the potential that Waterson-Gomez had, and she's always alive to win a decision. I think she's going to lose here, man. I think that Gillian Robertson priced at $8,700. I know you disagree with me from a price standpoint. I think that she can either win a decision with takedowns, or she can get the submission finish. Damn, she could even get a TKO on the mat. I just think that Gillian Robertson is on the come up, and I think she's going to get a big win here at $8,700.
Robertson's always someone that I like to target when her price point's just lower than this. Like, I feel like at the $8,700 price tag, is I got to hope she gets a submission, which, by the way, is plus 225 if you're looking to play that submission prop. Like, if you tell me Gillian Robertson wins by decision at 8,700, I just don't know if she's going to, with her price tag, be enough to be in the optimal lineup. That's my concern with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair, right? Like, but for me, say she gets a finish, she scored 105, 106, 96, 117. In fights she won that went the distance, Poliana Botello, 94. I think she can do that. I think that she can, and she's got so many subs, it's hard for me not to see her get a finish here. But, like, a couple takedowns, and it's a pretty safe matchup. I think she's going to do well.
I mean, here's the thing I would say. What's Gillian Robertson's best UFC win?
Yeah, I know, but what's Michelle Waterson-Gomez?
Well, I mean, the one thing...
probably Angela Hill, but I don't think she beat her.
Carolina Kovacevic.
Ugh.
I mean, she's fought fighters who've competed or been a UFC champion. I mean, if you look at Gillian Robertson, we're talking, here's her wins: Poliana Viana, Pereira Rodriguez, Maria Agapova, Priscilla Cachoeira, Poliana Botello, Courtney Casey, Sarah Fratta, Veronica Hardy, Molly McCann, Emily Whitmire.
Totally get it, and that's why my initial pick was Michelle Waterson-Gomez, and then I'm like, Michelle just engages in the grappling and the wrestling too much for my liking. It's just like, stay at range and pick her apart. You can win this fight easy.
No, I totally get you there. Next up, we got a heavyweight matchup. We've got Andrei Arlovski taking on Martin Buday. Buday, minus 250 betting fair, plus 200 for Arlovski. Buday, 9,100 on DK, $21 on FanDuel. Arlovski, 7,100 DK, $10 on FanDuel. Note that we got about a 20-pound advantage here for Martin Buday, weighing in at 264.5 pounds. Arlovski, 245. You talk about just throwing betting sprinkles out there, Pete. I mean, you might as well just throw a sprinkle on Arlovski wins by split decision, because, like, from a DFS perspective, I don't mind necessarily taking a extreme punt in Andrei Arlovski, realizing that, the fantasy score upside might be 65 points.
Yeah. I mean, and guess what? Guess who's going to pick him? I'm going to pick Andrei Arlovski. And the only reason I'm picking him is just because I'm not a Buday guy. I'm not a Martin Buday guy. I mean, I think that there are certain matchups where he can impose his will on his opponents. I know that he's training with my boy Tom Aspinall. I think it'll help him, yes. It's hard for me to see Tom Aspinall go 2 rounds with Andrei Arlovski and now think that Martin Buday is going to come in here and do work against Andrei Arlovski when, like, Arlovski got comboed on against Tom Aspinall, but, like, he didn't go away. He didn't go away until he got taken to the mat and subbed, and I just don't think that Martin Buday has the ground game to do so. Yes, he got picked up a beautiful submission against Josh Parisian, but I think that Andrei Arlovski is way better than Josh Parisian, and everybody agrees with me. Martin Buday, 9,100 is the price point, right? Like, if this was 8,200 to 8,300, Buday, sure. It's just too much value for a guy going up against, Andrei Arlovski is a guy that just has been around the block. His best days are clearly gone. But he didn't get finished against Waldo Cortez Acosta either. And I just don't think that at range, who's the better striker? It's Andrei Arlovski for me, and he trains with the better camp. If Buday doesn't pin Arlovski against the cage, I don't see him having as much success in this matchup as most people, because, like, I don't. I think that Arlovski's gonna. I think he'll do enough at 7,100 to just make your lineups a little bit easier so you can spend up and all that. But, like, I wouldn't be surprised to see, like, Arlovski. I mean, I guess I would. I want Arlovski to get a finish, Jason. I know that hasn't come since the Travis Brown fight in, like, 2015 or whatever, but I want Arlovski to pick up a finish. He's due. But, like, the Breshki fight that Buday had, not the best. The Jake Collier fight, okay, Jake Collier, that to me was impressive, but Collier proved that he should have if the guy took his body serious, he would be a force at 205. So yeah, a long-winded way for me to just lean with the veteran here in an Arlovski, in hopes that he could just do enough and make him competitive, because whatever he does, for whatever reason, judges like to favor him in close matchups, and he's shown he could go out there and put up good volume too. And I think that he's not bad in the clinch. So give me Arlovski to win at 7,100.
Just looking over best fight odds over at DraftKings Sportsbook, Arlovski wins by split or majority decision plus 800.
There you go.
There you
go. It's worth it. I might do it on both sides.
Yeah.
Like you take a Buday split, you take an Arlovski split.
Buday by a split majority decision plus 600.
There, see what I mean? There you go. And then just hopefully it's a close fight.
Yeah, I mean, look, if your mindset is you sit there and say, hey, Payton Talbott is a core play for you this week, and putting Andrei Arlovski in your lineup, but also you have to notice that if Arlovski doesn't get the win, it may only be 20, 25 points. So something you got to think about both sides of that equation there. Then we got Pereira and Hernandez, the Japanese fighter at 125 pounds. He is a minus 450 betting favorite, plus 340 for Hernandez. Hernandez 6,900 DK, $9 on FanDuel, and Pereira 9,300 on DK and $22 on FanDuel, Pete.
Yeah, so I mean, like, initially I see Carlos Hernandez as a big underdog. I'm like, all right, who's this Saruya guy? And I do some tape study. I'm like, oh, it's the matchup and style that gives Carlos Hernandez problems. Carlos Hernandez, I think, he's come through for us multiple times. Against Dennis Bondar, he came through. Against Victor Altamirano, he came through. He fought Alan Nascimento and Tatsuro Taira, two guys with extremely talented jiu-jitsu and submission games. I mean, jiu-jitsu and wrestling games. And he does really poor in that situation because he doesn't have great takedown defense. He doesn't get back to his feet the best. And he clearly isn't as skilled as some of these jiu-jitsu fighters. Saruya has been wrestling since he was 3 years old or 5 years old. He's been wrestling his whole life. I think that he's a great candidate to land takedowns here against Carlos Hernandez. His striking's relatively untested. Hernandez is not a world beater on the feet. I think he's a volume guy. Doesn't have great power, just very, very technical. I like Carlos Hernandez here. And I bet you Carlos Hernandez makes some rounds close. He might even win a round. But ultimately, Saruya is going to close the gap. He's going to grab a hold of Carlos Hernandez and work on taking him down, whether it's repeatedly, whether it's once a round. I think that Saruya is going to take him down. And, he has great ground and pound, good submission skills, very, very good submission skills. But I think this fight's going to go long. And I like a Saruya decision. Usually these lighter weight classes are very competitive fights. And I'm still going to pick Ray Saruya, even though normally in a situation where Carlos Hernandez is a massive, massive underdog, I'm going to want to get some exposure to him. I probably would in a 150 max because it's a UFC debut for Saruya. But in this flyweight matchup, I think that the intangibles favor the Japanese fighter in Ray Saruya, and he's going to incorporate takedowns, get some top time, and win a decision here at 9,300.
And by the way, that decision plus 240 for him by submission, plus 175. The Hernandez props, plus 1,400 to win by TKO KO, plus 1,400 to win by submission, and plus 650 to win via decision. Then our opening fight of the night is Ricky Simón taking on Vinicius Oliveira. Ricky Simón minus 250 betting fair, plus 200 for Oliveira. Simón 8,900 DK, $19 on FanDuel. Oliveira 7,300 DK, $11 on FanDuel. And this is one of those matchups that I've been looking at all week. And when it comes to Ricky Simón, you always, you understand the potential takedown upside that he has in a matchup. He splits his training between Team Oyama in California and American Top Team there up in Portland, Pete.
Yeah, I worry about Ricky Simón's chin. I have to tell you, I really worry about Ricky Simón's chin. His wrestling is fantastic. He's one of my guys that I planted the flag on, said, man, I love this kid's wrestling. This kid's wrestling is just fantastic. Sometimes he doesn't go to it. And I don't know what's going on lately, but it also seems like he gasses more now than ever. I mean, he's getting older. That shouldn't be it. That shouldn't be it. Maybe he's not having competitive rounds in the gym. I always said to you that, he might have a great team around him, But I wonder what he would do around like a super team of like America Top Team Coconut Creek. His takedowns are his best part. His hands are not bad. He has good power. He can knock out Oliveira here. Absolutely. We've seen Oliveira get knocked out on the regional scene. We've also seen Oliveira got taken down multiple times against Bernardo Sopai. Lope Dog is very dangerous, though. Ricky Simón needs to keep his hands up. He cannot go out there and get into a striking matchup because I think he's going to lose if he does so. The durability's not there and is very similar to Andrei Fili. The one thing that Andrei Fili doesn't have, Andrei Fili has wrestling, but Ricky Simón's wrestling is much better, and he's going up against a guy who has struggled to defend takedowns. Cub Swanson hasn't really struggled to defend takedowns all that much, so I think this is a nice fight for Ricky Simón to get back on track and back in the win column. It's just a dangerous fight because if he does stay on the feet, does say Oliveira defends some takedowns and makes it a little bit harder on him, he's live to get knocked out here. And it's going to be 3 fights in a row where he's going to lose. But something that does give me some confidence is that he did not get finished against Mario Batista. I think Batista's just as good as, but way better. You know what I mean? Like his power is just as good as Oliveira, but like technically Batista's just way better. So I think that Ricky Simón can survive. He might have to really change levels in some dangerous spots. But unlike other fights where he's put up massive numbers in the takedown department, I don't know if he exceeds 4. I don't know if he exceeds 4 just because I don't think he's going to need to. Once he gets on top, his top pressure is great. His submission skills are great. He can finish Oliveira. I'm going to pick Ricky Simón to win a decision here. And a lot of people are going to love him from a mid-tier, upper-tier standpoint. It's just dangerous. Like, I kind of wanted to pick Lope Dog just because of the power, but it's a massive step up competition. Bernardo Sopai took him down. That was a Hail Mary. That flying knee was a Hail Mary to bail Oliveira out of losing a decision. And it landed. It landed with 15, 20 seconds left. I think Simón's going to get a takedown around and en route to a decision dominant win at 8,900. So hopefully he doesn't break the slate because he has the skills to mat return his opponents 27 times and just completely flip the slate on its head. So give me Ricky Simón to win here at 8,900.
Yeah, I like the takedown upside of Ricky Simón. I mean, that's why I found myself really getting to him in terms of this matchup, just because of if this thing does go 15 minutes, I think he probably gets at least 3 takedowns, racks up a ton of control time. But I do understand where you're coming from, the concern of potentially getting chin checked in this one. Let's get into our straight up fight picks before we get into some listener questions. Main event, I'm going to say Alex Pereira gets the job done, becomes the first light heavyweight champion since John Jones to make 2 successful title defenses.
I'm with you, man. I want to pick Jiri, but, my brain's telling me Pereira, my heart's telling me Jiri. I'm going to go with Alex Pereira to get it done.
I'll go underdog number 1 in Brian Ortega.
I'm on the other side on that one. A little bit too much red flags for me, but I'm going to go with Diego Lopes.
Give me underdog number 2 in Anthony Smith.
I'm going to go Anthony Smith.
I'll go Macy Chiasson.
I'm going to go Mayra Bueno Silva.
I'll go Ian Machado Garry.
Yeah, I'm going to go Garry.
Go Pyfer.
Pyfer.
I'm going to take Fili, but man, you were convincing me when you were breaking down that fight, though.
Yeah, I could be dead wrong, right? Like, Fili should win the fight against an aged Cub Swanson, but I'm going to go with the veteran here in Cub Swanson.
I'll go Jourdain.
Jourdain.
Talbott. Robertson. God. I don't feel good seeing either one of these guys' names. I'll go Buday. I do not feel good about it, though.
I'm going to go Andrei Arlovski, man.
I'll go Ray.
Yeah, Ray for me as well.
And I'll go Ricky Simón. I'll get some questions here from Discord before we get out of here. Of course, Discord totally free to join that we have there. You can click the link in the bio to check out that one. Value plays underneath 8K on DraftKings. Look, I think you have to look at Jiri Prochazka, Brian Ortega, Anthony Smith. You mentioned about Swanson. I think that's another good one. Those would be probably my top ones underneath 8K.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's plenty of live dogs. It's just like, for me, I'm going to go with the veterans in Swanson and Arlovski. I like Anthony Smith as well. The late notice nature kind of makes me feel like that fight's just going to be a dud. Mm-hmm. But from like a value standpoint, I think Macy's probably going to be the most popular dog.
Yeah, no question about it. Core 3 on DraftKings. For me, it's going to start with Ricky Simon just because of that takedown upside. Then as I look at the other two, it becomes kind of tough for me just because of where I think goes. I would probably, and this is going to go into another question we have here. I think I'd put Ian Machado Garry as a core play just because of, stylistically, I think he's got the higher probability. And then my third one, I'll go Alex Pereira.
Yeah, I'm gonna go. God, this card is tough, man. I'm gonna agree with you with the Alex Pereira. The other one, you say core play?
Yeah.
If you're just doing simple, I mean, I know 9,800's a lot, but he's gonna win. He's gonna win. At least you're getting a winner.
And likely in that scenario, it means you're probably rostering someone like Arlovski or Barriault. Yeah, or probably, Chiasson probably could be in that scenario too.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that it's Talbott, man.
Favorite contrarian plays. I got two.
Contrarian.
Bueno, Silva.
Yep.
And Ian Garry.
I like it. I think like a contrarian. It's probably not that contrarian, but like he's relatively unknown. Like Gene Silva, like he's not. I wouldn't say that's contrarian, but like he's going up against a guy that has a ton of UFC fights, and he had one great performance. Now he missed weight. Perhaps people are going to be off him. Maybe that's a play, but I reckon he's going to be pretty popular.
Top 3 dogs or from best to worst. For me, number 1, I'd probably go Anthony Smith. 2, Brian Ortega. 3, probably Jiri.
Yeah, I'm going to go Anthony Smith, Cub Swanson, Arlovski for me, which those words coming out of my mouth sound so crazy, but yeah. That's what I'm going to do this week.
Best leverage plays. I think you have to look at Bueno Silva, and I think it's just because of the pricing there on DraftKings. I mean, it's a different story when we're talking about FanDuel, but I think on DraftKings, I think Bueno Silva is going to be a leverage play for a lot of people. It would not surprise me just because of, sometimes we roster with our hearts and not our brains. Ian Machado Garry could also be a nice leverage spot here today.
Oh, man. If I knew he was going to wrestle, I think I would be all over it. It's just like, if he gets sucked into that karate fight. So I'm with you. I'm with you. I think that he has some really sneaky potential because, like, from a DFS perspective, scored 110 and 106. Outside of that, 109. I feel like he's due some massive, massive score. What happens if he goes out there and just ragdolls Michael Venom Page? Like, picks him up and Ricky Simons him.
Hey, I remember sitting in Mohegan when Paul Daly took down Michael Page 4 times. And let's just say the crowd of Mohegan was not very happy.
Bro, that's all you had to say. Now, I'm rostering Ian Machado Garry now. That's all you had to say. I completely forgot about that. Paul Semtex Daly took him down. Dude, I forgot about that. No,
you remember that? You remember what was it? Was that the Saturday? It was back-to-back nights of fights.
That's the night I fought, and then the following night. Remember, I fought the Friday night, and then the following night was the Saturday night?
Was it the Friday night or Saturday night card where Mitrione was the main event?
The nut shot.
It was a nut shot, and I remember sitting in press row, and because he was taking on was it Karatanov, I want to say?
Yeah.
And there were dudes in the crowd yelling that they'll step in and fight him.
Yeah.
Only a Mohican.
Oh, Mohican. Yep.
Best takedown upside. I think you got to look at. I look at Brian Ortega. I think Machado Garry throws it one there. Ricky Simone. That'll be my top 3.
I'm with you, man.
Ranking the 9K options or 9K options. We only have 4 9K options here. You got Payton, Ray, Buday, and Pyfer. I would put Talbott number 1 just because I think he's the safest play out of the 3. And then I probably go Pyfer 2 just because of the first round upside. Then I would go Ray 3 and Buday 4.
I'm going to go Talbott 1, Saruya 2, Pyfer 3, Buday 4.
Yeah, so of course we do have our DraftKings contest. You can get in that contest right now. The link to that contest is in the show notes, whether you watch us on video or if you're listening to us on the podcast channels. Of course, you do have some MMA going on tonight. We got PFL up in Sioux Falls. This is going to be card headlined by Brent Lawflate and Justin Gonzalez. There has been some massive line movements in terms of this one. Umatov, he opened up as a minus 500 betting favorite against Brennan Ward. He is now a 28-1 betting favorite against Brennan Ward. Also, Gabriel Braga was a plus 150 betting underdog. He's now at minus 205. Don Madge opened up as a plus 136 betting underdog against Neiman Gracie. He's now minus 285. So if you're looking to, make some wagers tonight, this kind of happens in the PFL regular season where you see these massive lines, and it's just like, man, you got to go prop game hunting in terms of that one. Logan Story, nearly a 3-1 betting favorite. I'd probably say, honestly, Jenkins Braga is probably the one fight that intrigues me the most on the main card. Obviously, can Braga stop the takedowns above Jenkins? Lorenz Larkin's part of the preliminary card in a feature welterweight matchup there. And if you're an old school Bellator person, if I would have told you like 4 years ago, hey Pete, 4 years from now, Gochi Yamauchi's fighting Andrei Koreshkov, you'd be like, what the hell is happening? Gochi Yamauchi, that 145 pounders, going to go up to 170?
I know. It's crazy. And Gochi was supposed to fight my good friend Nate Andrews and ended up backing out at the last minute because of weight issues, because he fell in love with lifting weights, got way too big. When he moved up and he fought Michael Venom Page, I can admit I put money on Gochi Yamauchi because of my concerns of Michael Venom Page ground game. But all it took was one leg kick to the kneecap, and that's all she wrote. I think that Gochi's very, very talented. But Koreshkov's probably going to knock him out. Koreshkov's disgusting. I love Koreshkov.
Yeah, and the one thing I do love about when we get to the second round of the regular season is there's going to come points you're going to see them put that lineup in the graphic on television. Hey, this fighter needs a stoppage by the first round or second round to move on to the playoffs. Of course, the playoffs will be right around the corner here. And I was happy for my guy Brent Primus, going to be the number 1 seed in the lightweight tournament. Good to see some of those guys are really getting an opportunity to make a life-changing money is about the best way to put it. Mm-hmm. Life-changing money.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely, man. I'm with you. And, seeing fighters that or have dealt with get an opportunity for life-changing money is huge. And it's really cool. And that, I do think that the PFL has some really good qualities and characteristics about it. I just think they got to fix some things because I think the general idea is fine. I was there the other night at PFL at Mohegan. I thought they did a good job when it came to everything that was live. I just think taking 6 hours, 7 hours to watch a PFL event is something that people are not going to want to do when it comes to the broadcast.
I remember this was. I don't think it was. It might be beginning of the season. Maybe it was last season. I had a manager text me who was at an event and. The synopsis of the text was this is an awful product watching live because there was so much delay between one fight to another. Like, hey, I get you have a television product, but the people who are in these stands, like, they're here to watch fights. And, you know, I think PFL is doing some good things. You know, I think that it's ultimately getting the interest to where no matter what, someone tunes into the television set. By the way, I know you love Nate Maness, right?
No.
So I happen to see this come across my Facebook timeline. We'll end on this one. He puts this on Facebook. The UFC has roughly 2 weeks left in our exclusive negotiating period before I can entertain other offers. They can make an offer after that still. I fully want that contract and to be in the UFC, but also I want to feel valued and respect I think I've earned. If they choose to go a different direction or cut me short in contract specifics, what should we do next? One, PFL, Bellator, BKFC, game red boxing, or retire and cultivate the garden.
How are you going to put that out there when you're still under contract?
Exactly.
You cannot do that.
That is the way. This is my perception of it. Either his manager or himself have realized the UFC has no interest in him.
Well, they gave him a softball matchup against Jimmy Flick. He should have got a first-round knockout. And he went the distance with Jimmy Flick. And that was a spot where I think the UFC was kind of saying, okay, well, let's see. I mean, this guy's got really good wins, even though we've underestimated him a ton. And then he went out there and just put up a dud. Like, he won the fight, but, like, that should have been the highlight. The UFC wants highlights. There was no highlight there. People were asleep.
I think the most interesting thing I'm looking forward to is what do they do with Kelvin Gastelum?
I hope they let him go.
If you listen to the Dana White comments, that was my perception. Yeah. That was my perception that Dana was done with him.
Yeah, I mean,
or they're just going to give him the hardest matchup.
100%. I mean, you're paying him how much money for him to miss weight every single time?
Oh, I saw someone say this on Twitter, and it was basically along the lines of, if you represent a 170-pound fighter in the UFC, and they come to you with a Kelvin Gastelum matchup, don't take it.
No,
because you're going to put all the work in.
You're going to be at disadvantage rather, and then the only thing you could look forward to is getting a percentage of his purse. But still, I mean, like, come on.
Yeah, well, if it was you, and I'm your manager, I'm sitting there going, Pete, I don't think this guy's going to make 170. So, what do we want to do?
All right. Yep.
You know, it's the unfortunate situation we see in this sport. But of course, as always, we do appreciate everyone who tunes in every week for the Fight HQ podcast. Of course, no show next week because we have no UFC show next week. Next card is UFC Denver, which that card has gone to complete shambles. Have no idea what the main event is going to be right now because Macy Barber pulled out. Rose Namajunas now taking on Tracy Cortez. Cortez's coach has said it's a co-main event. Allegedly, it was going to be Jared Cannonier versus Kevin Holland as the main event. Jared Cannonier telling people, going, nope, I'm under suspension from his last fight in Louisville, so we'll see what the main event is going to be.
What the hell?
Shara Bullet Magomedov has said he would be interested in taking on Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland is all for it, but Dana White said last week he believes that the odds of it's he does not believe that the Bullet will be able to get licensed in the United States because of his eye, which is not surprising.
No, not at all.
No,
which is crazy. He's going to be an international fighter, but we'll see how that card shapes out. But a little bit of a bummer that we don't have Conor McGregor on this card. But I do think that the skills of Jiri Prochazka and Alex Pereira are equivalent, if not exceed, the matchup against Michael Chandler. So I'm looking forward to it.
Look, as someone in the bar industry, yeah, it's a bummer not to have Conor because it was going to bring a different set of eyeballs into the bar on fight night. Mm-hmm. But look, Alex, Jiri, the odds of that thing sucking is like 5%.
Yeah, and it's the best. It's literally the best matchup they could have done. And like, there's nothing else. It's the best thing you could have done. So it got thrown together. and I mean it's really good. It's kind of, the UFC does amazing things, and it's really impressive that they were able to fill a Conor McGregor absence with the second best fight you could possibly do.
It's a prime example. The show will go on no matter what.
They don't care, man. Nobody. I mean, like it's not that they don't care. It's just like it's a business. I mean,
and look, at the end of the day, you dangle enough money in front of somebody, they'll be like, "Yeah, I'm there."
Yeah.
I mean, it's a prize fighting game. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. That's what it is. I mean, it's International Fight Week, so, like when I saw people like, oh, they're going to cancel this event, I go, no, they're not. That is not what the UFC does. This is not what they do. They're going to, and it's just crazy to think that Alex has become like their go-to guy. I mean, steps up UFC 300. Of course, this matchup was supposed to be at UFC 305 in Perth. Moves up to here. It's just, at the end of the day, the show will go on, and
show will go on, my friend.
I'm looking forward to watching the fights. I'm not sure if I'm going to sit and watch the fights at home or if I'm going to go out tomorrow night. It's just, I don't know. Like here in the Tampa Bay area, like, it's getting crazy. Like it used to be, you can go to the bar, get there 9:30, 9:45. You get a seat at the bar. Now you can't. Like, might just sit on the couch.
Yeah, you know me. I prefer watching fights at home. That's just me personally. I don't like nobody talking to me. Just leave me alone. I like to. There are very few people I watch fights with, and if they're allowed to watch fights with me, that means I really love them, because like I like to focus on it. I mean, like some people like to talk about this or that, or I don't know, man. I'm obsessed with this sport. It's what I do. It's what I've done professionally. It's what I coach. It's what I break down with the best co-host in the business, and Jason Floyd. It's what I break down here on the best YouTube channel at Fight HQ. If you guys can hit that like button, get us over 150 likes, subscribe to the channel. I think we're like 13 away from 1,000 subscribers. We get to 1,000 subscribers this week, the channel will be monetized, which is great. It's a big step in the right direction. We've been chugging along. I think this is the week we can do it. So if you could please share our content, we really appreciate it. And I think it's an interesting card, and we'll see who had better, selections on some of the fights, Jason or I, but usually it's somewhere in the middle. And, that's why I'm right on some, Jason's right on some, and, you take a little from both, and we'll win you some money.
And what I'll do in Discord for the PFL, I'll go through those betting odds, maybe see if there's something I really like that has some good odds on it. Then, of course, tomorrow afternoon, prior to the UFC, I'll throw some bets in there that I like, some sprinkles, some of those ones that maybe, throw them, maybe a quarter unit on, maybe a half unit on, and what you like there. And, of course, Pete does the same thing as well. So we appreciate everyone who tunes in to Fight HQ. We will talk to you in 2 weeks when we're going to be breaking down UFC Denver.